people to do? We told people to eat more carbohydrate and less fat. But the epidemiologic evidence actually says that you should be doing the exact opposite of what we told people all those sort of the last 30 or 40 years. So this gets me to the story of vegetable oil, which is very, very interesting. And it sort of starts back in the 1900s, and everybody thinks that vegetable oil is really so good for you. But if you look at the origins of it, it actually came from garbage. So why did we eat vegetable oil? Well, cotton was the first one. So it was cultivated in the United States in the 1700s. And in the South, right, they had all those slaves which were picking cotton. So they had lots of cotton. But each 100 pounds of cotton also produced 162 pounds of totally useless cotton seeds. So you needed like 2% of the seeds to plant new cotton, but the rest was just garbage. So they had these huge heaps, tons and tons and tons of cotton seeds, which they would dump into the river. And of course, eventually somebody found them out, and then they sued the companies, and then they had to do something with it. So then they thought, okay, well, by the 1850s, the technology advanced to the point where they could actually use it for lighting oil, which was great. Until in Pennsylvania, they discovered oil. So they drill a hole in the ground, and all of a sudden there's all this oil. So the market for cottonseed oil as a source of lighting, and remember, before that they had whale oil, and that's really what saved the whales, was this discovery of oil. They were getting extinct because people were using this whale oil to light their lamps. So anyway, so now what we're going to do with these sort of heaping mounds of toxic waste, you had all this cottonseed that's just rotting away. So what are you going to do with it? Well, why don't we feed it to people? That was a good idea. So that's what Crisco was. So it's crystallized cottonseed oil. There's actually no evidence that giving cotton seeds to people is any good for you, because you don't eat your t-shirt out, right? So why would you give this to people? There's no evidence. But hey, when you took cottonseed oil, it looks kind of like oil. So you could blend it into olive oil and you could feed it to people. Well, so that's what they did. And of course, Italy got really mad, and they actually banned all American olive oil because it was all adulterated with cottonseed oil. And the whole vegetable oil industry actually started because it was cheap, not because it was healthy, because your feedstock, of course, is garbage, so it's free. So what Crisco did, which was very innovative at the time, was they hydrogenated these oils. So you have this all vegetable shortening. Hydrogenation, partial hydrogenation, is of course trans fats, which of course had never been in the human diet. But here it was, Crisco looked like food, so let's sell it as food, right? That was the whole idea. But it came from garbage and it was cheap. That was the only reason we ever thought it was good. So that's how we got margarine, with all this partially hydrogenated soybean oil. Prior to that, it was cottonseed oil. And everybody thinks it's really, really pure and nice, right? But it's actually not. Because what you have to do to get vegetable oil is a whole lot of processing. So if you take olive oil, for example, you take olives, you squish it and get the oil. That's extra virgin olive oil. If you take corn oil, corn is not oily, like in the least. So what you have to do is you actually have to take tons of corn, you press it, then you spray hexane on it, which is a petroleum derivative like gasoline, so that you can actually drag all this oil out. Then you have to refine it, remove it, degum it, bleach it, and then it's like all natural, healthy vegetable oil. So it's highly, highly, highly processed. And our bodies, of course, are not used to sort of processing all this. So lately, of course, we've realized that, hey, all these omega-6s have thrown our omega-6 to omega-3 ratios totally out of whack, which is highly inflammatory, which is super bad for you. But, for a long time, we thought, hey, vegetable oil's nice and healthy. They look healthy. And of course, that's how we got into this whole trans fat mess, because we told people to stop eating butter and eat more margarine. But margarine was, of course, partially hydrogenated vegetable oils or trans fats. And then by 1997, you had studies from Framingham. This is 20-year follow-up data from Framingham, which showed that people who ate a lot of margarine were like dying a lot. And it's like now, of course, it doesn't seem like a surprise because they're eating a ton of trans fats. But the data to suggest that vegetable oils were beneficial was actually highly suspect. So if you look at, this is from 2013 in the BMJ, if you look at people who were in this Sydney Diet Heart study, those who took a lot more of the polyunsaturated fatty acids, which is that intervention group, they actually had more cardiac deaths, not less. So switching to vegetable oils looked sort of harmful. The same thing with the this one, which France in 1989. He took a large study, he put them on the treatment diet, which was reduced saturated fats, switch them over to vegetable oils, no change in the CV event rate, but an increase in all-cause mortality. So in 1989, they already were having evidence that eating a lot of these vegetable oils was actually very, very harmful. And a reanalysis by Ramsden in 2013 showed the same thing. If you actually look at all the polyunsaturated fatty acid studies and then break them down according to whether or not they contain omega-3s or omega-6s, because both are polyunsaturated, what you find in the top part there is that if you look at studies that primarily increase omega-6 fatty acids, so vegetable oils, you have an increased mortality. If you look at those that have both omega-3 and omega-6, then they're sort of protective. So overall, there's no benefit, there's no harm. But it actually depends which polyunsaturated you take. And that's why everybody's so sort of enthusiastic about omega-3s, as opposed to omega-6s. And the irony is that for 50 years, we told people to go from butter to these trans fat-filled margarines, right? Those big tubs of sort of margarine that my mother-in-law used to have tons of. And every 2% increase in trans fat calories actually doubles your cardiac risk. So this stuff is actually pretty toxic to you. So in 2013, the FDA removes trans fats from the generally recognized as safe, or the GRAS list. So these are foods that are generally recognized as safe. They took trans fats off of that. In other words, they acknowledged that trans fats were like literally poisonous. So for 40 years or so, we told people to switch from eating butter to eating poison. And an estimated 100,000 people every single year died because of that advice, which actually stemmed from no evidence at all. So that was the most ironic part